All right.
Share your screen.
Esoteric Book Club is starting now at 7-Eleven on 7-Eleven, and we were just talking about the Mars square Uranus and how fun it's been deflecting everyone else's anger around us. So yes, what is that? Righteousness. This is the how dare you? How could you speak that way towards others or towards me? How could you dare? And today I was listening to a podcast about shame and how everyone's shaming everyone for everything. Annalisa was shamed today for that.
And yesterday.
For presumably shaming people that don't have Wi-Fi.
Which I wasn't, for the record, but this person thought I was.
Is it shame or is it praise? We're praising the fact that Wi-Fi exists and it's exciting and you don't need to be a jerk about not communicating with people, or we're shaming jerks for not communicating with people because
I was shaming jerks for not communicating with people. That's totally valid, I was saying there's no reason to be a jerk because of how many good ways we can communicate with each other. So I feel like if you were triggered by that, that just says a lot about you and the shame that you're carrying.
Yeah.
For sure.
Totally. Let's see. This is confusing. Let me get rid of this MC line and the AC line.
That happened to you today, Annalisa?
Yeah, that particular one. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
It's all right. I laughed it off and I reposted the photo of them doing it to make a spectacle out of it because if you give me ammo, let's do that. Let's do it. I'm down. Let's talk about this out in public, in the open, I have no fear. No, to me, it's come at me, bro. Let's do it.
Moon is in Scorpio, speaking of which.
Come at me, bro. Mars and Leo. I'm a Leo.
Yeah.
Come at me, bro, Mars and Leo. That's Mars' new hashtag right now.
Come at me, bro.
Come at me, bro, Mars and Leo.
Come at me, bro, Mars and Leo. I'm ready. I've got my Captain Kirk moves down.
I didn't leave the house today, but I felt this transit because the client that I had today didn't pay me for my services. So I'm just why? Yeah. So,
what?
I don't know. It's a donation based one, but that doesn't mean that it's free either.
Oh.
So, I have disclaimers, because this has happened to me a few times before, and I can't afford to do this stuff for free, just being super practical about that reality for me. But
you should post about it. I think this Mars and Leo you should post about it.
The thing is that say that what's that?
It's going on YouTube, so
yeah. I mean, when I first did announced that I was doing donation based readings this month, I was very upfront about that. I have it on my Instagram highlights now to kind of save that whole thing that I did when I announced this a few weeks ago, that I was like, hey, look, when I've done this in the past, I've had people not pay me before. So this time, please don't do that, because it's actually really disrespectful of my time. And it makes it seem like you really don't value my work. So I have lots of disclaimers when you set up a donation-based reading for me, to make sure that you read that it says, please donate or whatever.
Well, maybe in the wording, because legally donation means that it's not an obligation. So maybe, and it's because of tax purposes that people use the word donation, because then you technically don't have to pay tax off of a donation.
Okay, I guess that's true. I see. For me, I thought that when if I write suggested donation, then to me that sounds more like
or
if
you
you
could
don't.
say sliding scale.
Yeah.
Because then that
sliding scale is better, I think. If you change it to sliding scale readings for the future, then it implies that you're expecting payment more probably.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it justifies not giving you the donation, but I'm just saying it might help.
And because I do I was doing business or financial coaching for entrepreneurs. And just in legal terms, the word donation means that it's not a taxable income. And so people like me who think that other people are taking advantage of donation may not actually, well, I've done it once in the past where like you go to a show and it's like donation, donation, donation. And like that gets frustrating for me because I'm like, is it a donation or not? Like, what is it?
Right.
Are you not exist in the rule of the law or, you know, like pay your shit back to the community. Don't say it's like, that's my Scorpio theory. That's like, come on now. Either you're accepting donations or you're not. So like a sliding scale might word it. I don't know. I think it's a psychological experience people have with the word donation.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And I think it's a good learning experience. This is the first time this month since I've done this. Like since when I very first started, like a few years ago, I did it, and that's when nobody paid me. And now I'm in a very different situation than I was a few years ago. So doing it now, I think it's a good learning curve. But this is the only person who's not. And before we ended our session, she was like, "What's your Venmo again?" So it's not like, you know, she was. So I don't know. I'm also trying to kind of release my own ego and expectation around like, you know, receiving money for it. So I'm trying not to be too hard on her because I don't know what her situation's like either, and whatever. Right. So I'm just trying to kind of.
If everyone were open and conscious enough of their shame and guilt in the most like fundamental ways to the point where you can have an open conversation about it, and especially money is the most difficult, touchy subject to talk about because you're taught from a very young age to never talk about money. In the corporate world and corporate America that we live in, it's like taboo to talk about money. So you're not even just working through the specific person's experience with money, but also like the cultural experience that we all have with money, which is like, don't talk about it, don't ask, which is a really great segue into chapter 14 about conjunction, because the process of giving and receiving is very much a conjunction experience, the phase in our transformation. And I think that conjunction might be one of the more difficult things to harness in our spiritual practice, because with the giving and the receiving aspects, we have to, in our own individual biological way, come to terms with being a giver or receiver. So if you're born a man or woman or trans, and really conjunction is the process of balancing the masculine and the feminine within the self, because the law of our universal law is that there's a polarity and there is duality in existence. It's just, you can't get around it. It exists, that's happening. There's masculine and feminine. Whether you like it or not, there's definitely merging of the two. There's definitely commingling. There's definitely, it's a spectrum. It's not just like, the way that it's represented in esotericism and alchemical illustrations is because, for the way consciousness was during that time, that was the only way that we could explain it in these illustrative personas of the sun and the moon. And but conjunction is supposed to be the merging of the two, the hermaphroditic expression of our creativity within ourselves. So polarity, this is a good segue, right? Like giving and receiving. How do you manage that with other people and within your own self? So again, going off of duality though, I wanted to bring it to the astrological wheel, because the astrological wheel is one of the best places to learn of the various forms of duality and polarity, because every sign has a polar opposite to itself, but it is on the same plane as each other. So it's the same concept, same things, but on opposite sides of that pole. So looking at, I'm still sharing the screen right now, yeah. So looking at, you know, the eclipse that we just had on the 2nd with the sun and the moon conjoined, conjunction, which is when astrologically 2 planets are right on top of each other or have an orb of 0 to 1 degree. That was, let's just take a look so you can see, because this will be the theme for the day. When the sun and the moon are conjunct. So I'm not going to get it exact, but you can see right here the moon and the sun conjunct in Cancer, and that was our eclipse. The new moon, when the light of the moon is invisible to us because it is met with the sun, and so therefore wherever the sun is, it's daytime and you can't see the moon. That's why in the full moon, when the moon is opposite the sun, we can see the moon's light very bright, and it's the sun's reflection off of that mass body of cheese that's floating around in the sky. But so the polar opposites for the eclipse was Cancer and Capricorn. They're always opposite each other. They never change. The zodiac wheel never changes. It's always the same. This is our zodiac belt that we subscribe to, and we find themes in these oppositions. So Cancer is representative of the nurturing feminine. Capricorn is representative of the kind of self-sacrificing masculine. And the 2 polar opposites in the sky represent our masculine father and our feminine mother in the sky, but also within us as well. So for the new moon and eclipse, a lot of themes surrounding family were coming up, your origin story, where you come from, what it means to be from where you are in the land that you're living in. All the things that we kind of talked about in the last meeting. But conjunction specifically in alchemy has been represented as the merging of the sun and the moon, because that's just the way that we've come to know ourselves. So just some visual samples of this theme that we're going through, which is the sun, the moon. And the sun will usually be represented on the masculine right, and the moon will usually be represented on the feminine left. So here it's reversed, but if you were facing, it would be your right on this left side and your left on this right side that you're looking at. So here we have an example of the balancing between the moon and the sun, the eternal flame that is spirit, and let's see, Thoth is over here weighing the soul, weighing the heart to a feather. And then we have the 2 Sphinx under here with Libra, further solidifying that balance, because during our equinoxes is when the sun and the moon hold equal spots in the sky, which is represented in Libra and Aries. So that's that other polarity. So chapter 14 is conjunction, creating the Overself, the dance of the cockerel. I guess I'll just read this. It says, the new perspective of energy released from the breakdown and reclassification of psychic structures during separation gives the alchemist the strength to divorce himself from sterile mental marriages, stubborn beliefs and attitudes involving the ego striving to build fame, fortune, and family. So conjunction is the point in which we've overcome or have successfully separated our sense of self from old belief systems and ideologies. Annalise is holding up the devil card to represent like the point when you feel kind of shackled to these belief systems and ideologies, and with the devil being kind of the holder of the chains. Saturn a lot of times is represented, or to me, I mean, Saturn is the gatekeeper of karma. And so this card with the devil could be seen as Saturn, or once you have gone through the lessons of Saturn, can you then be free from your earthly shackles to the third dimensional plane, which would be, you know, like lust, like the seven sins or whatever, like lust and greed and desire for fame and fortune, money, all those fun things that we're not allowed to do. But after you overcome those parts of yourself that are not really yourself, it's really overcoming the physical self, the physical body that has attachments to these things because it makes you feel real, it makes you feel alive, it makes you feel like you exist, and it's like adrenaline that's pumping through your veins that allows this to happen, or like serotonin coursing through your brain that says this is a good thing, keep doing it. But it's a physical reaction, not you. It's not, you're not those chemicals. You are not serotonin. You are not the level of adrenaline in your body. So overcoming those peaks and waves of emotions and cravings and addictions is the process of separating who you are and this old version of yourself. So in the book, Dennis William Hawk gives his own example of his conjunction experience. And it was a dream that he had. About his child. It was an interesting dream where he was basically stuck in the muck of Earth and saw that there was a child next to him who was probably him. Right, in our dreams, everything is us or a reflection of us. So the child, faceless child, was him, clutching at his chest and afraid and terrified. And then all of a sudden they rose up into the sky, and he could see everyone else below that was still stuck in the muck and the mud and the shit. And then he kept rising up and onto a mountain, which is also another spiritually significant type of geographical location, being on a mountain or the peak or the height. And then let's see, the child vanishes from his arms on top of the mountain, and then there's 3 palm-sized crystals, which would probably which represents the soul spirit and the trifecta of self. Soul, spirit, and matter. And then they begin to glow. This startled me, and I carefully laid the crystals back on the boulder where they returned to their inert state. Pausing to look around, I noticed that the entire plateau was tilted toward the opening of a cave in the side of the mountain, which is another very spiritual symbol, a cave representing feminine, receptive, receptacle, where magic happens, the recess in the self. I walked toward the cave, and the closer I got, the more I realized I was man-made, probably a mind of some type. I hesitated at the entrance because it was pitch black inside. but the floor was flat and even, so I proceeded. I kept walking blindly until I spotted a dim light ahead. I walked faster toward it, but when I reached it, I couldn't believe my eyes. The source of the light was two glowing buttocks embedded in the wall like some fleshy golden ore. What was even more amazing was the way I responded to this disconcerting sight. I stood before it transfixed and humbled, as if I were standing before the throne of God. Inexplicably, I was overwhelmed by a feeling of being home in front of the massive butt, of being where I belonged. This big, androgynous butt was somehow the end of my journey. I woke with a thump as if I had been dropped back into my bed, and then sat up shaking my head in astonishment. I could not help but laugh out loud. I mean, what was I supposed to do? Kiss the ass of God? Yeah. So that was his conjunction dream.
Can I share what happened to me when I read that chapter, like how freaked out it made me?
Can you please?
I just think it's like anybody that watches this video might really enjoy this, but I have this analogy that I've been using in readings with clients for probably about 2 years now, and maybe less than that, maybe like a year and a half or something, but a while. And I don't remember where I got it or how it came to me, but I just like started using it one day and it just felt like a good analogy. And I felt like when I was reading this chapter, it was my analogy that I had been using for like the last year and a half. And I was just like, what the hell? But basically, whenever I have clients that are like stuck in life in terms of like, I want to be here, but I'm still messing around with this stuff here, I use the dirty diaper analogy. And the dirty diaper analogy was basically my own story of potty training that I use as like a metaphor for my life. But essentially, like, you know, when you're a kid and you're little, like wearing a diaper and shitting in it feels great. Like you're just like, I can shit anywhere that I want to. And I would even just shit on the floor. Like I just remember it was just like, it felt good to just shit wherever I wanted. And then, you know, when I started potty training, there was like this point where it felt wrong to shit on the floor and it felt wrong to sit in my own shit. And I remember, you know, by the time I was potty training, I was like, after a while, you know, I can't imagine ever shitting myself on the floor or in my own pants again. Like that's horrifying. And whenever people are like glamorizing a certain time in their life, like their early 20s or their teens, or they're having a hard time moving on to that next stage of development, I use the dirty diaper analogy. And I think you're essentially asking yourself to sit in a pile of your own shit for a longer amount of time, the more that you romanticize or hold on to this part of your life that you will never have again. It's gone. It's like, do you really want to sit in the diaper that much longer? So I tell my mom, like, after I read this chapter and I have that whole, like, holy shit, you know, thing with this, and she goes, well, do you remember what happened? Like, what actually made you want to stop shitting in your diaper? And I was like, no. And she's like, well, we were doing really well with potty training. Like, you were totally all about using the toilet and not wanting to use your diaper anymore. And then she was like, and then somehow you just decided that you didn't care about it. Like you were like, I'm not going to grow up. I don't care. And it was like, you just all of a sudden just were like, no, I'm going to wear the diaper. Like I like the diaper. I'm comfortable in the diaper. Like I'm not going to stop using the diaper. And it was really frustrating, she said, because I was like learning how to potty train, I guess, a lot earlier than what they had expected. And then I just stopped. And I think that might have been part of it. She said that like I realized I didn't need to learn yet or something. But she said that one day I was out and I was playing with older kids and I was naked or something and I just shit. And all of a sudden I like realized, like I had this awareness that it was like I was too old to be shitting on the floor and it was embarrassing. Like instead of me feeling free, it was like shameful. And she said after, like I cried, I like fell apart, I guess. And she said after that, I like didn't want to use the diaper anymore because I was so embarrassed. And she told me that part of the story and I was like, that's even funnier and that's even like more perfect for the analogy. But the fact that he had this dream in his alchemical process of like, I see the earth that he's in as his own shit, you know, and the child, you know, is like a huge part of that. And then when he sees the golden ass, just like that whole thing to me is just like so freaking funny. Like, I just was so amazed that he had that dream, and that I've been using this diaper analogy, because people obviously are not expecting, like, they come to get like this mystical tarot reading, and I give them the diaper analogy, and I'm just like, you're sitting in your own pile of shit right now and you need to get out. And they're just like, whoa, like, you know what I mean? Like, they're not expecting me to say that. And I feel like the way that he felt after this dream, seeing the golden ass, is like the same exact thing. And it's funny because now, like, after reading this chapter, the exact thing of conjunction is starting to happen for me in like a totally different way. But anyways, I just wanted to share my dirty diaper analogy and how like weird I felt like that whole thing was.
Do I need to put a trigger warning on this video?
We talk about poop.
Shit. Up ahead. Yeah.
I mean, it's in the book. It's not like that weird if you're following the book.
No, I like that analogy though. It makes a lot of sense. Like, the kid is like, grasping her, like, get me out of this shit pile. Get me out of here. And then he picks up the 3 crystals. Like, he like, maybe it was a moment of reckoning that there are these 3 different aspects to self that need care and understanding in 3 different ways, but to merge them all together is to like move beyond, I mean, this child, right? Interestingly, children are also kind of like the offspring of conjunction, because conjunction is associated with the act of sexuality and sex, creationism, or just creation in general. And so children come into play because of that. It's a very 5th house thing, I see it as, where you're learning about what it means to create and harness the masculine and feminine within yourself, and how good it can feel, or like accomplishing it can feel, or like ecstatic that feeling can bring to a person. There's a lot of imagery that Dennis William Hawk mentions that is that's incestual, and if anyone has read any mythological literature, you will hear of, you know, like, I can't think of any. Was Venus born out of Saturn, and Saturn's her dad? So like, people are, you know, constantly being born from themselves and being born of their sisters and brothers, and it's just like a whole mess of family incest, which is a really fascinating side parallel discussion that could happen in terms of like incest and how that manifests in human existence based off of an alchemical approach. But for the purpose of sticking to this chapter, the incest is supposed to represent your personal merging of self, not the fact that you're merging with your dad or your mom, but that you are merging those 2 within your own personal self. So whenever there is an incest scenario, that's what that is talking about. So any goddesses or gods that were born from their parent or had sex with their parent is an analogy for merging the masculine and feminine of that person within themselves. They're not like having sex, but the act of sex was the most tangible way of expressing this merging of the two opposites. And so that's why it was a really strong visual for expressing the conjunction process, which in turn made alchemists look like disgusting, vile people, because they were depicting like things, you know, parents having sex with their kids, but really it was just a symbol for that experience. And so the energy of sex is what's really trying to be represented here, because sex energy is creative energy. There's no difference. The way that it's harnessed and used by individual people is what makes it different. And the way that we're taught to use it is what makes it different, taboo or shameful or whatever. What does he say? The goal of the sexual alchemist was to tap into the reservoir of soul energies in a woman without losing any of his own spiritual essence. So back in the day, you know, I think that maybe women for a little while weren't really seen as human, but more so as spiritual vessels for men or for the male person to harness or use in their own form of creation or like reproducing themselves. But he does go on to say in the book that of course it is, intercourse is a two-way street, and women also share in the exchange of sexual polarities, but women specifically harness an energy called kundalini, which is a kind of bodily one thing which could be controlled by the male spirit and absorbed from the female during intercourse. In Western alchemy, this liquid fire was embodied in vitriol and visualized as the two copulating serpents entwined around the magical wand of essence. It was thought that great power could be obtained by augmenting the supply of the female energy in the male, and tantric alchemists were credited with amazing feats. It is even said that their urine and feces could change lead into gold. The Taoist alchemists allegedly used their sexual reserves to live hundreds of years. So that inhale and exhale is another form of creative self. You can deny yourself of one or the other at will. And denying yourself of one or the other is a form of building tension within yourself. And that tension in itself is the energy of sexual transformation or sexual creativity. And so, of course, we hear stories of athletes withholding sex or the release of an orgasm in order to harness some kind of strength and focus. And this is, I don't know, this is, I guess, we see the masculine obelisks and the phallic shapes, and the feminine is the yoni egg or a cave, of course. I mean, obviously, these are like biological. But so, let's see. But there's also something that happens when we harness the sexual energy within ourselves, and that is to use that creative force to merge our own being in order to project our creativity out into the world. So artists, poets, writers, people who work in art, for example, is a great example of how we utilize the intuitive parts of ourselves, but then also the action-oriented parts of ourselves. Because if you're all action and no intuition, then you're just like beating boulders down every day for no fucking reason. But if you're all intuition and no action, then you're living in a illusory dream world where nothing is actually happening in the physical manifestation. So to merge the two is real creativity. It's real harnessing of our creative selves. And to represent that, our homework assignment was to draw a photo, draw a picture, create an artwork that represents our higher self. It's a higher self portrait. And this is to just get in touch with your intuition, feel it come out of you onto the page, into reality. Question why the symbols you're using acknowledge, but with no judgment, the colors that you use, where they go in relation to each other. And let's see, I wanted to show also the tarot cards for conjunction, because they're very, very, very attached to the Lover's card in the Major Arcana, and art as well. So the Lover's card, here's the Rider-Waite version. It's a male, female. The female is standing in front of the serpent of knowledge. And knowledge, now that, you know, where we're at in our esoteric understanding and learning, is the intuitive self, the intuitive mind that is connected to the one thing or all. And then the masculine in front of a tree on fire, showing the passion and excitement and energy towards, you know, conquering. In the book, Dennis William Hawk says how the masculine is in search of the feminine, and the masculine is connected to the spirit, and the feminine is the soul. And so the spirit is constantly in search of the soul. The soul is always there, not moving, waiting. That's the nature of feminine, which is receptive, kind of waiting to be receiving. And then the masculine within us is like the fire, the purpose, the part of us that reaches out.
The seeker,
yeah. Which my Mars is in Libra, so I'll take any anecdotal references that you have to masculine. But so, yes, and then we have, I don't know what angel this is, but it's some sort of archangel.
It's Raphael.
It's Raphael. Why is that Raphael?
Because I think he's the angel of love.
Mm.
And I feel like I'm forgetting a lot about that, but it's Raphael.
Okay. And then here's the Thoth version, which I always like to incorporate because I'm biased, and I use the Thoth deck. But so here he uses color as an added expression of that masculine feminine. So we have a white baby and a black baby in front of a white, maybe female. It's maybe a female, feminine. I can't really tell though, which is why I like the Thoth deck, because it's speaking more to the essence of the two rather than like female body, male body. This is how it looks. Anyway, whatever, political correctness, right? With the cherub in the middle. So the left must be the masculine, because it's the crown. It's a golden crown, and it's geometric in shape. And then the feminine would be the cup receiving the orb, right? And she's holding the cup with the dove. Oh yeah, and he's holding the sword, which is masculine. So see, they were just like, that's how you can just put the pieces together, even if you don't know what you're looking at. And they're standing in front of the Orphic egg with the serpent around it, guarding it, to represent creativity and the creation, just creation in general. And then also the art card, I think, represents the act of conjunction creation really well. Because it is literally water and fire mixing together, which is also, I think we were talking about, what's the other alchemical process that
Distillation.
Distillation.
Yeah.
Later.
Yeah. Good job, everyone.
We're learning.
We're learning.
I wanted to show the Mother Peace images for the Lovers and the Two of Cups too.
Yeah,
They also
you up.
had cool conjunctions that were a little less. Like I like the Mother Peace Lovers just because it is a little more gender neutral and more spiritual in the symbology. And then the Two of Cups, which is like the diminished version of the Lovers, has more of the actual personification of the conjunction. And they are doing kind of like a witchy wedding with the, you know, the way that the cups are tied. So I just thought that was kind of cool too to add.
Yeah.
I like how they did like the old Greek style pottery for the cups too. Anyways, yes.
Well, yeah, various versions of the merging of sun and moon in everyday culture and life and all over around us. I mean, our fathers and mothers represent this for us as well. And then your relationship to your father and your mother directly represents your relationship to the masculine and feminine within yourself. So the first, sorry, my dogs. So I mean, the most fundamental way to get in touch with your masculine and feminine within is to do an investigation of your relationship with your parents. And then there you go. Your answer is pretty much right there with how it's being manifested in you. And then what you decide to do with that is your own free will, because we are all adults at some point. So we have to take responsibility for ourselves and not blame it on our childhood, which I think is a really beautiful way of like what Dennis William Hawke dreamt about, is that child that he was taking with him to save, because, you know, at a certain point you're responsible for your child self and you're responsible for who, you know, your past as a child, because time is non-linear, time is cyclical, and it exists as a spiral. And so we have the opportunities to constantly be going back into our child self, working with that child self, talking to that child self, nurturing that child self, and replenishing whatever masculine or feminine energies you did not feel you received as a child. So let's see, psychologically, he says that
Wait, I wanted really quick, sorry, I was getting real hung up on Raphael real quick in that, because I feel like there was a purpose for the conjunction. I found it really quick. I wanted to share it. Raphael is best known as a healer, but is also patron of matchmakers. He is very different from Cupid, though, which is in the Thoth deck, Cupid's arrow. That was it. That was all I wanted to share. Sorry.
Cool.
We were like, why is he in there? And I was like, that's why.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Thoth has Cupid, and then like a higher being of some sort that is the real grandmaster navigator between the two. And so that's what
that one also the Hermit, like it's the same figure. And that it shows that image like pretty regularly.
Let me see. Oh, it does look like the Hermit.
I think it is supposed to be the same in the Thoth deck. Like it shows that same figure in numerous cards to represent what the Hermit represents in the spiritual journey.
So then with that knowledge, we can assume that the Hermit is the person who is the seeker of higher knowledge, and then once you've attained a certain level of awareness, you're balancing the two selves within yourself. And so that is the higher self then, like navigating the two realms, the soul and the spirit. So Dennis William Hawkes says that the conjuncted person, before conjunction happens, the person can be lustful and even wanton of seeking his or her other half, and jealous and possessive once it is found. On the other hand, the conjuncted person is appreciative of the alchemical forces at work in relationships and careers, and tends to be considerably kinder and more sensitive to the dynamics of people. Such a person appears balanced and confident, hard to panic, not easily upset, though still very much in touch with his or her feelings. So it is a level of inner harmony that is achieved through conjoining your internal self and overcoming the pain of separation with an old identity. What does it say? So conjunction is associated with the virile bull, and assigned the astrological cipher of Taurus to signify this operation. The ancient Egyptians believed the bull to be sacred, and they believed it was born in the dark of the moon, and they drew the round head of the bull with the crescent moon to identify it. And interestingly, the glyph for, the moon is elevated in Taurus, and it has its favorite spot there. It is, I can't remember all the words right now. Hold on.
Exalted.
Exalted, thank you.
A glossary.
I know. I need Google glasses. Implanted in my brain. So what does Taurus mean to us? It gives us value. It's ruled by Venus. It's associated with beauty and love and art, and it can be lustful, though. So when you think of the Taurus, the bull, that is unaware of self, it has a never-ending, unsatiated hunger or desire for to consume, to feel whole, because there's an imbalance. But when the bull is balanced and has both equal parts stable, it can create beautiful works of art. And so, what do you have? You have the Six of Pentacles and the Five of Pentacles.
Because I see the Five of Pentacles is like what you're talking about in terms of the shadow aspect of Taurus. It's very like feeling of lack, and it's fear-based. So that's where we're very materialistically hungry, but we don't believe that we are able to obtain that material stability. And then the Six of Pentacles is more when we're working towards mastering the energy of Taurus in the giving and receiving position. And this is actually a really interesting card to look at in relation to what Kathleen went through that she was discussing at the beginning of book club, where she's doing donation-based readings, and it kind of maybe brought up some of this stuff, but you know, you're trying to be in this place, and so that is like that Taurus, and that is conjunction, especially if we put the devil like smack dab in the middle of this right here. It's like all of the earth shadows.
Oh yeah, for sure. And what's funny is that that same girl actually just emailed me about 5 minutes ago and was like, I'm waiting for my paycheck to clear on Saturday, so I'm going to send you. I was like, okay, great.
I was wondering about that when you were talking about it, because I've had people pay me late after readings that weren't donation-based. Like, they just took it to pay me or something. I was like, I wonder if it's...
And I've been in that situation too. So, and I've said it, you know, and I said it out loud when I was like, ooh, frustrated, you know, on the surface level with it. I'm like, you know what, who am I to get worried about it? Because I have no idea what her situation is. So, but anyway, I just wanted to share that. But yeah, that's totally true. That's totally true.
I like how you balance the 2, 5, and 6 with the devil in the middle. It just helped me to see the dichotomy between the 5 and the 6 and moving back and forth between the two, and how when you put the devil in the middle, like there can be a difficulty moving past the 5 into the 6 due to like the fears or what's limiting beliefs, limiting ideologies, which is the quintessence of lack, right? So what else? Oh, let's talk about our higher self portraits. So Annalisa, you've got yours hanging up behind you, and you painted your face black, and you've got a moon and a sun for eyes, and a series of numbers spilling out of your brain.
Well, it's my hair. I guess it's my brain. Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of cool. Like, so in our last book club, I hadn't done my name meditation yet in our last meeting. And so I kind of combined my name meditation with this ritual just because I needed to do both of them. And it felt kind of like, well, that might be kind of cool to like say my name a bunch before I paint my picture. And I was actually like, I don't know if you remember, but like when we talked last, I was kind of nervous and I was like, oh, I think I'm going to cry and it's going to bring up all this stuff. And maybe me already talking about that made it easier, because when I did it, that didn't happen. I actually felt really detached from myself in a way that I honestly feel like is from this last week. Like I went through, when he talks at the beginning of conjunction, which I had already read this chapter, so but I had already kind of forgotten about it, but he talks about we're breaking up these spiritually unproductive earthly marriages, which is, you know, stubborn beliefs and attitudes involving the ego striving to build fame, fortune, and family. And this last week I was around a lot of like, you know, famous musician type people that had all of those things that for me as a Leo that was trying to work towards that stuff for a long time, it's triggering. And I had this whole night where I was just not okay. And I was realizing that whenever I'm in those environments, I get that internal egoic hunger that I also felt when I was addicted to drugs and alcohol. And I was starting to see the marriage between the egoic drives for material success or recognition and how that and addiction to actual substances are the same. It's the same vibrational frequency. And once I saw it in that next elevated state in myself, like being triggered, I almost immediately could detach from it as fast as I was. It was like I just needed to see that. Like I needed to recognize it. I needed to feel it as a hunger and see it on that same vibrational frequency as addiction and an egoic addiction. Like you're just addicted to that constant seeking. And I think it's easy for me to not feel that way when I'm not put in environments where that is the culture. But as soon as I get into the environment of that, all those triggers happen. But it happened before the actual event that I was going to. Like I had it the night before the event. So then when the event happened, because I had done that internal stuff, I didn't get triggered the entire next day. And I felt totally detached. And I just actually got to enjoy myself in just being in myself and just having my own experience with it. And my husband kind of went through a similar thing in himself. And we were just like, wow, that was really fun. Like we actually just had a really good time for once. And that situation has never been that way for us at all. Like we've always had a horrible time. We usually get in a fight and it's usually just a whole like domino effect of triggers. So that felt really empowering to go through before this, because I have a lot of insecurities around like letting go and letting myself be creative, because I have so much judgment and like walls up around loosening up in that way. But so I did the name meditation. I think that like breakthrough I had separated me from my name. So when I did my name, it just kind of sounded like a mantra to me, and it had kind of a cult feeling to it. Like I felt kind of like it sounded culty. I don't know. like I was like, this is weird. Like there's an Annalisa cult egregore that I'm creating somewhere or something. And then I was like, okay, I'm done with that. I don't need to do that anymore. And then I did my 108 Omani Padme Hum meditations and like acknowledged the directions, the cardinal directions. And then I just put my Pandora on to like the 60s, 70s, 80s radio station that I have that plays all these bands that I like. And I just like hunkered down with my water from the dissolution and my acrylic paint scent that my mother-in-law bought my husband that he was like never going to use. Like he doesn't paint. I just have this weird acrylic paint set that his mom sent us for Christmas. So it was kind of cool because like I felt like that was kind of synchronistic of just like us getting this weird paint set and now me using that. But yeah, then I had a meditation before I painted this though in the Omani Padme Hum thing where it showed me like me as a galaxy with rainbow hair. And so I was like, because at first I didn't know what I was going to do. I was just like, I have no freaking clue what I'm going to draw and I don't feel comfortable doing this. And then I saw that and I was like, okay, I'm just going to do it. And I just put music on and did it and I had a blast. It was like so much fun and I was so not expecting any of that to happen at all. And I feel like it was because I was so like I just had no expectation and I just like let myself do it, you know? And then I was like, I had this whole thing where I wanted to judge it, but I stopped myself and I was like, you know what, you love this and it feels really good. So just let yourself savor that and do what it's supposed to do, like chemically. And when I got to the numbers part, that was because I couldn't figure out what color to put in that space. And I wasn't feeling any color, like nothing was calling to me to put there. And then I just was kind of asking like, well, is it done or is there something else I need to put there? And then I just started seeing numbers there. So I did the numbers that are pretty prominent in my life. And then I wrote my name into it with the Leo glyph at the end because I thought that was a good way to end it or whatever. So yeah, that's my conjunction art story.
I love it. That's so, I love that your face is black after doing that.
Yeah, well, and it's actually a super dark blue. So it looks black, but it's like more of it has a bunch of blues and there's like 3 different blues that I used. But yeah, it has like a darkness. It was funny because like I read this chapter right after our last book club and then I had to reread it again to get prepped for tonight. And after reading his dream, even with like the 3 stones in it, I was thinking of like, there was like something about fire and stones. The soul feeds on the fire. Oh, this was it. So reading this and then looking at my painting was funny to me. It was like, ancient philosophers saw the human body not as physiological machine, but a vessel for soul and spirit. Though many people today confuse these two for one another, spirit and soul are really 2 separate and unique entities. Spirit, our inner king, is constantly striving for the higher realms, constantly seeking something better, but soul, our inner queen, is not totally committed to perfection for its own sake. Instead, the soul feeds on the fire of existence with all its foibles and catastrophes. As the expression of the one thing in man, soul is closely connected to matter and the body. And then it says, soul craves memories and reflections and seeks expression in art and music. The soul transcends rational descriptions and defies order, and her language is images and feelings. But I just like for some reason when it was talking about that, I just thought a lot about like these 3, like the way in which the darkness with the 3 like felt really intentional for me. And then he talked about those 3 stones in his dream and I was kind of like, whoa, okay, like that just happened and it just felt very like the fire water stuff made sense. Like I feel like it's one of those things where it's like making more sense to me after reading the chapter again. If that makes sense.
That's fine.
super fun project. I'm so glad we did this. Like, I'm just tripping out. I thought I was gonna have like a doodle and like all embarrassed and not want to show you guys, but instead I'm like, this is really fun.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Kathleen? What did you?
Yeah, I did. So it's kind of hard to see. It's like a body, but I have this like Ouroboros that when you were showing the images, like the alchemical images, like at the beginning, I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. They all have like these Ouroboros, or like these two dual snakes, like this one specifically, I was like, holy fuck, like that's like almost the same colors I used in mine too. And when I did my meditation for the four corners, it was really, really powerful for me. I had very deep, intense, like almost at every turn when I went like north, east. It was like very intense shit that I like felt, and I totally saw like past life stuff when I was in the north area with earth, and like seeing very deep like shackles, like literally seeing chains around me, and almost like this fear a little bit that kind of crept in, and very different. It was almost like I was moving through different parts of myself at different times in my life when I was connecting with each of these like four elements and each of the cardinal directions. You know, when I was in the East, I saw my like future self, and then I saw my like younger self, and then when I went and kind of finished up and saw myself connecting with the element of water, like in the West, that's where I saw like everything kind of come together with all of these other different aspects of myself, different memories that I've had, different experiences that I've had or have yet to have. And it's similar to like a little bit with what Annalisa was saying, where you kind of saw yourself as like made of space basically, and then like a rainbow hair. For me, I saw myself floating in space and just being a light energy for the most part. But when I was done at the end, it was very much like I saw these so silly, but I saw these like seals jumping in and out of like water. And then I was being wrapped around that light body with like these fiery snakes almost. And to me, what I kept kind of feeling with that image of like things kind of going like in a circle or wrapping around me in like a circle, it was more so like the message that I felt from that was actually a sense of continual self-renewal from all of that. And so that's kind of like what I guess came out in this image that I made of myself, of like the snake wrapping around me and it being fiery and then kind of dipping into this like water sense of self-renewal a little bit here. And so the face, the hair is very specific to me, because on one half it's my like what I want, what I see myself having, like old like white hair, long white crone hair. And then the other half is my hair, how it used to look like when I was in my early 20s. It was like super short and here. So it's like my younger self and my older crone self pretty much. But what's interesting
That's like
is
his dream, the child and him.
Yeah. And what's funny is that I wasn't even looking, but because I was using what's called dyes instead of watercolor or acrylic. So they're very, very like super sensitive. And I guess I wasn't paying attention. I just like very lightly must have like touched my paintbrush to whatever, and the brown that I used for my hair started to bleed and open up. Like, you can kind of see here, it's like where my crown chakra is. So I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool that was like a happy accident, I guess. But it's like just like kind of exploded right there a little bit. And I mean, I would like to kind of continue to move forward with it. It feels a little unfinished to me, but I'm also not trying to put any expectations on it either. So if it's meant to be looking like this, that's totally fine with me too. But yeah, I just put very little expectations on my, because I am an artist. So I tried not to, I didn't want it to be anything of like, whatever the fuck, I just wanted it to be purely for this purpose and just kind of see what comes out. But yeah, the meditation was really, really interesting, really beautiful. And I pulled a tarot card for like each one too. And it was I did it on the day of the eclipse. So when the sun and the moon were conjunct one another. And this is very personal, but when I was done at the end of this, and I kind of saw this image of myself at the end of this like compass, like personal, I saw it as like reconnecting with what my actual true higher self compass looks like, essentially. And I'm putting my air on because it's hot again. But at the end, I actually, like, my root chakra, I was like very, it's like really personal, but I got like, what's that?
You got stimulated.
I got really stimulated, and I totally, masturbated in the center of the corner. And then I read, and I didn't even like finish this chapter. And then I continued reading the chapter. I was like, oh, okay, so that's part of this process, actually.
I'm glad you were the one to bring up masturbation, because I wanted to bring it up, but I was like, I already talked about the diapers, so I was like, that's too much. But no, this is funny, is that I wanted to, and I didn't, because I knew if I did, I wouldn't have gotten the energy to do this. And I had this whole realization where I was like, wait, if I blow my load, I'm not channeling my creative essence into the art project.
Which is why I couldn't do this after I was done with that ritual. Exactly. I did it today at like a whole week later. I couldn't,
I forgot about that too, though. That's the thing, is I hadn't read the chapter since our last meeting. And so I forgot that was in here. So today I was like, oh my God, my subconscious like stopped me and remembered all this shit, but I totally forgot. And I mean, obviously, like, I'm reading this shit all the time and I understand like Kundalini or whatever, but I just think it's so funny that like we're all having that.
Well, that's what it's stimulating. That's literally what conjunction is, and that's why it's been represented as sexual for eons. And that's what the work is now that we've like gone up to a certain level. We're digging deeper into our own Kundalini creative life force. And, as female identifying individuals with female bodies, I feel like we have a very special relationship with that. Oh God, my dogs. All the rabbits are outside, and so my little terriers are going crazy right now because the sun is setting. But they're also very stimulated at the moment of the sunset. It is that time of day. But so yeah, that makes so much sense. That happened to me too in the shower. I was like, I could masturbate.
I was in the shower.
Like, I could.
Before my ritual, and then I was like, wait, no, don't do it.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, same with me. I was like, this is it. no, I have to harness this.
I'm so stoked we all went through that together. Holy shit, that's amazing. I'm just like tripping out right now.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, Kathleen.
Well, now I'm like, wait, should I have held myself off too? But
well, no,
I don't regret it. I don't regret it.
No, you can do it however you want. But you separated it. You did that on a different day then.
Yeah, because I like you said, I totally blew my energy. I couldn't do anything for the rest of the day. So
it's true. That is your creative essence. You have to decide, like, are you doing it to release or are you doing it to channel?
Yes.
Yep. I drew this picture of myself, and I don't exactly know what it means necessarily, but I like to, that cross, that red cross, which I knew intuitively was coming out for some reason, but I didn't know exactly why. And actually, now that I see that card with the big wall or mountain in the background, but maybe to me it looks like a wall of water. I had a dream that was in, but so the cross or the cardinal part was really speaking to me, like just this cross symbol, and I was trying to represent it in me and how I subconsciously view my personal trajectory on earth and like orienting who I am and my being or my soul self. And I have this little pocket of untouched air in here, which represents to me a sort of purity of thought that's not necessarily a part of my being, but something that I'm continuously trying to attain. And it's on the left side with the intuitive side. So it's like a safe space. It's my safe space. And then the arrows were, I wanted to have a symbol that represented divinity to me, and my quest for higher knowledge and my thirst for the divine. And so with these arrows, I was visualizing, what is it, Aten? Aten, which is the sun god that Akhenaten kind of brought into existence, and which is the rays of the sun beaming down to give life force. And I don't really know. I know this is a pond for some reason. It's there. That seems to be a symbol for me coming up. This reminds me of the Holy Grail that I'm trying to attain. It's on the right masculine side. So that's maybe something that's more like more of an earthly goal that I have, is to attain a grail of some sort for myself. And the green color I use because of its connotation to earth energy, but also ironically it's linked up with extraterrestrial energy as well. And
just gotta yell at the dogs for a second.
And then this cross over here again, which I know it means something, but I don't know exactly. But in the temperance card, I'll have to look that symbol up.
This is the judgment card. But it's funny that you brought up temperance, because I have temperance here because it's the same angel.
And she's in a pond.
Yeah.
So maybe it's the merging of the two.
It is. I think so, because that's the same angel.
Who is that?
I can't remember. It's not Raphael. Maybe it is Raphael. I don't think it's Raphael. I can't remember who the temperance angel is. It's whoever judgment is. I mean, if we think about it in Egyptian, it would be Mot.
Mm-hmm. It is fire and water, which is like, the conjunction.
Yeah, these are both Sag cards.
Yeah.
I mean, Pluto also is said to rule judgment, but
Yeah.
Yeah, so that cross, which is a navigation symbol, but I wanted to depict it moving because it's not stationary ever. It's always an evolution, and the trying to depict the continually revolving I guess navigation in my mind that's always changing, but also the evolution of time as well, and how it's never stagnant and it's always a perpetual flow of existing.
I have the cross, what it means. I found it.
Oh, what is it?
I think you'll like this. I like this. Oh man, I just had it on here, but then I clicked on it and it got rid of it. It says, oh my gosh, did I lose it? It basically was saying the cross represents the even mind that's able to make like fair judgments.
Yeah, if it represents having an inner compass, then it would represent like someone who is able to make sound judgments based off of their own like harmony.
Oh, this is even more amazing, Evelyn. I found it. Sorry, I interrupted you. I'm just excited. Okay. The ancient Greeks created the symbol with all legs of equal length and size. One of the simplest symbols in use since ancient times. It represents several things to different cultures. In ancient Greece, it is an emblem of the 4 elements, which is like duh, but in the ancient Middle East, the symbol represents the 4 directions, north, south, east, west, and the 4 winds. Even the ancient Aztecs used a symbol to represent the meeting place of God at the cross section. The cross in this card indicates that an even mind, sound judgment is of foremost importance in our personal development. And it's the red cross.
Yeah. Isn't that also the cross for the Knights Templar?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
cool.
Yeah. So that's my masculine side. And then I put the end stoppers because there needs to be an end somewhere.
Get off the wheel.
You need to have a boundary somehow. But I'm faceless because I feel my true higher self is faceless. Except
that's how I felt with this. Yeah. Yeah, we're all faceless in ours.
Yeah, there's no attachment to my face or how I look in any way. But I do like having some touch of femininity, I guess.
And Annalisa and I have our hair too in ours, like some touch of something.
This little like red lip star.
Yeah.
And I put Venus on my head.
Yeah, that's nice. A very large symbol of femininity on your forehead for sure. But the cross is on your forehead and the circle is above your head.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Definitely intuitive call for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Annalisa, do you want to show us what the next step is for fermentation?
Oh yeah, like just in terms of the ritual that we're gonna do.
Yeah, do you want to give us a visual example right now?
You want me to just try it right now? I was gonna do it for the next video.
No, yeah, well, yeah, that's what we're doing now. That's for.
Oh, we're gonna do it in this video now. I thought it was for the next one.
No, well, I'll introduce it. Fine.
No, I'll do it. I didn't realize we were doing that in this video. I thought we were doing that as part of our ritual. I thought that was in the fermentation ritual, right?
Yes, but also I just wanted to enlist your drama into an example for what the next step is.
I mean, we can right now if you want me to. I feel like you really wanted me to do it.
I just feel like it would have more flair and pizzazz.
If we did it. This beautiful.
Yeah.
drawing that I did. I know. Well, and the thing too is like my mom really doesn't want me to destroy it. So I had no guilt about destroying it until I found out my mom's ego is it, you know what I mean? It's like when your mom's like, you know,
so wait, the next step
fermentation
is fermentation.
Yeah, that's what are we on? 5. This is the 5th.
This is the 4th, and then fermentation's the 5th.
Yeah.
And so, also I forgot to mention that conjunction is the first step where we are conjoining our physical selves with our higher selves. And so from this point forward, we're working on our collective subconscious. And so the symbols that come up will be from the collective that we're garnering within ourselves that we have good connection to. And so the fermentation process is becoming in tune with the transpersonal self and the unconscious self that is connected to the collective. And so in order to do that, we must now detach even further from the image that we had of our so-called higher self, which is depicted in these images that we created. And the next process for fermentation is to break down even further this idea of self and allow it to sit, sift, ferment in the waters that we are using to purify our soul. So, with that said, we are now going to destroy these images that we have of ourselves, kind of in order to detach the ego even further.
Can I read this part in the fermentation chapter just to give a prequel of why we're destroying? Okay.
Yeah.
So it says, they talk about like what the fermentation process is in terms of like breaking down dead matter, but they're saying that the indwelling spirit is then removed from the fermented solution by distillation. The chemical signal that fermentation is taking place is a rainbow display of colors that the alchemist named the peacock's tail. I totally forgot about that, so that makes this even cooler. That's why I want to read it. Chemically, this is the iridescent film of oil that forms on putrefying organic material or the multicolored skin that often forms on molten metals like lead. In mythology, the peacock was considered sacred to Juno, which is cool because that's an asteroid that represents marriage, right? So that's part of the conjunction. The Roman goddess of lunar light and protector of childbirth. And in medieval Europe, peacocks were known for their ability to fight snakes and consume or neutralize their poisons. Eating the peacock's flesh became synonymous with integrating the many colors of the alchemical opus. The ever-shifting colors of the peacock's tail represent the true light of spiritual initiation, our first glimpse into the astral realm. Let's see, they talk about psychoactive plants to basically melt away or putrefy the ego. This deep realization of one's inherent deficiencies initiates a mortification and decomposition of ego, and quite often at this point, a mental depression, a black mood settles over the alchemist, and there is an extinction of all interest in life. The alchemist understood that sometimes what is perceived as spirit is really just an inflation of the ego. I think that really speaks to artists too, you know, like artists often are depressed, and usually, right, you'll have, like, art is blowing the load, and then when the load is done being blown, artists tend to descend back into their dwelling, which is why you get addicted to substances that numb you out, because it's like that's why the ego, it's like chasing this high constantly. That was my whole epiphany that I had when I was getting triggered in that environment, is like I went home after a night of a lot of stimulation that stimulated my ego, because everyone else's egos were also stimulated. We're all stimulating each other's egos. And I came home and I felt high in a way that was really triggering for me, and it felt like an addict kind of feeling, and it stressed me out. And I think that I remember like a lot of the musicians that I played with when I was younger would get really depressed and resort to alcohol and drugs after tours and stuff. Like they'd be able to get it together for tour, but as soon as that tour was over, it was like, who am I in the world, you know? So I feel like that's why destroying your art and detaching from your egoic attachment to your creations is healthy and important, because you're learning how to not live in that state of hunger to the point where you feel almost a slave to your ego, or like you only find worth in the high and you don't know how to counterbalance it with, you know, it's like only finding value in the masculine. You don't know how to live in the void. So this act of destroying this is letting go.
This isn't you. Although this is a depiction, a representation of symbols that you identify with or that you feel drawn to or connected to for various reasons. But it's also, again, speaks to that symptom that parents oftentimes have with their own children, where they put so much of their own identity into their children, which is their creative self, their lineage, them being reproduced into reality, that they lose sight, or they lose a sense of who they really are as an individual, because it's placed so, they project so much of their own selves onto their creativity. And so this representing our creativity, our children, who we are, who we think we are, who we thought we are, who we had, you know, subconsciously conjured of ourselves. It is to an extent, but there's just a level of a detachment that must happen in order to move beyond this and even further into which is the void. And yeah, that's such a great analogy in terms of, you know, the depressed or tortured artist. For many, of course, they have many various different reasons that are all valid. Everything's valid, everything exists for a reason, but for this specific purpose, destroying the art is a part of the process of evolving and renewing and letting go of outside sources of egoic, I don't know. This isn't you.
I am going to save these pieces, though, for that next ritual thing.
Yeah, save these pieces for the next ritual. So the next ritual for fermentation is to destroy the art however you will. And then, what did we say, Annalisa? Are we lighting these on fire for fermentation, or we're just putting them in the water?
Well, I think that I like the fire idea just because it says it's the fire and the soul, but if you don't want to light them on fire, that's fine. But yeah, you're kind of just like getting it down again and then putting it in the water.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like when we originally had the ashes and they went in the water. Now the art is going back in the water. We created the art with the ashes of the calcination, and then we created a self out of that.
My dirty water.
It again so that we can go, because after fermentation is distillation, which is like the next progressed version of dissolution, kind of.
Mm-hmm. It feels, I know this is all just symbolic, but there is like an energetic feeling to like destroying this and then putting it in the water, and like knowing that the ashes were in here that I used to paint this picture. It's now going to get dissolved down even further and put back into this water. And then eventually we'll have a dissolved, totally dissolved self that's light and airy and is functioning on in a divine space.
I can feel a vibration in my hands emanating off of this right now. And I feel like, what was my life before we did any of this? Like, how was I relating to my growth before this. I feel like I didn't know anything about myself and my growth until we started actually doing these rituals. Because I feel like I probably need to do this whole, like you were saying, this should be a 7-day workshop, or yeah. I feel like I need to do this like every month. Like I need to paint myself and destroy myself like every so often. You know what I mean? Like this is good. This is healthy, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, how many times, like how, especially for a creative person, how hard is it sometimes to even just, like you were saying before, to even just get to the point where you are creating? It's like such a process of overcoming your ego, your self-doubt, your disillusionment. Who am I really to even create myself or create an image of myself? Like the paralysis analysis of like not even being able to make a move because you're constantly questioning, theorizing, philosophizing, stuck in the mind self, in the thought self, and then to create it, to like go through all that work to create it, and then just to destroy it again. It feels powerful to me.
You know what insight I was given too about that I'm just remembering now that you're talking about this with the creation process, was I was in a meditation, was told that the more versions of you that you create in the world, the more you're karmically bound to this experience. So like if you are a musician or an artist and you have yourself over decades in the collective consciousness, that karmic vibration is still stuck and bound here.
That makes so much sense, because like you think of these celebrities that have a lasting existence here, where people are constantly feeding that energy, they're constantly feeding the archetype of that person. And even not just celebrity who are being like famed and glory, but celebrities like who are infamous, who are their name is constantly being dragged down in the mud, or people speak of their name with disdain in their voice. Like we're giving those celebrities an energy that's holding them down here because they've done something energetically so big and so vast to kind of like put a pin in their energetic sphere here on earth, and that for us to like judge constantly.
Yeah. And if you track people's charts after they've died, like celebrities' charts, when they come back in big waves through the collective consciousness, it's happening in their chart. Like we looked at Freddie Mercury's chart when the Bohemian Rhapsody movie came out, and he had so much shit going on in his chart around that. And even my teacher looked at like when Queen first got back together after he died, I think she was like talking about that. And that's been really good for me just in like this whole alchemical process, because like regardless of what's real or true or whatever, it's actually really healthy for me. Like when I downloaded that or like received that insight, there was this level of me totally letting go of this need to see myself reflected back to myself more than I'd ever felt before, because I do really want to clear my karmic stuff and elevate and kind of, I feel like the Kuan Yin, like get off the wheel thing is very prominent in my consciousness of like something I'm supposed to be focusing on. So when I got that, I was like, okay, like I need to really not be married to anything I create or any perception of what my consciousness is creating, because I don't, it's just, there's so much karmic debris or dust that you're like creating in that. And that's why too, like when that book thing happened, I was like, this is a test. Like I'm just here to be tested, and the test is for me to say no to that book opportunity thing. Because I was like, I don't want to sit with 30 years of my own life with that in my karmic debris, and then who knows what happens after that, you know, like it has to feel like I'm adding to the collective consciousness in a way that is better or not at all, you know?
Yeah, creating an egregore of yourself. I mean, some people that's their goal.
Yeah.
for some people it's really helpful. Like some people come here with that specific purpose.
Right.
To be a guide of some sort, or a staple, or an archetype, or a theme, or an idea for generations to come, and that's their purpose. And so I think, but if, as long as it's like, and maybe it's not so conscious for them, but on a deeper level they know it's their purpose, whether it comes up to consciousness or not, of course that's dependent on everyone. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there too, that it's like, it's not you, it's not your ego, it's source that is doing all of this through us. And so to have attachments to whatever we create is, it's not pure.
Yeah.
Because it's not you. Your ego didn't do anything here. It's working through you to make it happen. So we're on to.
I'm glad that you wanted to do this on video, because that's really fun.
Yeah. Okay.
I totally forgot about the rainbow peacock too. That made it even more fun.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see how that manifests, because I haven't really had a strong connection to that part of fermentation yet. So I'm interested to see how that comes up in this whole process. But so the next meeting is on the 25th of this month, and we'll be going over fermentation. And so for that meeting, you will have already started the process of fermenting these old pieces of yourself into the water. Maybe it's like super dirty and gross by now, but into the water that you've been using for the past 2 months now, 3 months now, of like purifying yourself. So yeah, however you see fit. I think you can burn it too before you put it in there. Actually might be easier to break it down further. Burn it by burning it and then putting the ashes in the water again, and letting it ferment in there. So, and then the meditation is to burn the paper with like being fully aware of your breath and your experience, and being fully awake and conscious throughout the whole process. You can work to, I've been really enjoying doing Breath of Fire before any of these processes, because for me, that's kind of just what I need to help me push through, just to harness that fire energy a little bit more inside of myself, because I just personally need that. But some of you might feel a need to become more calm, or like meditate and get into a more like altered state. So I think it's really up to you. You know yourself better than we do at this point. So whatever works for you in that process. But as long as it's being a very, very conscious, slow process, not rushing through, just like noticing every part of the body while it's like conscious meditation. So waking meditation. And that's it. Cool. So yeah, same time in 2 weeks on July 25th. And for anyone that's out there watching these videos and participating via YouTube, please write a comment, because I want to know how your experiences are going. I want to see your art. We want to connect and just see how it's been going. If you have any questions or anything like that too, we want to hear them. So again, this is Evelyn Bonzoul from Astrom Council, and Kathleen Callahan from Daughters of Wands, and Elisa Six from Cosmic Lady Six. And we are concluding the 13th chapter of Esoteric Book Club.
Yay!
Always a pleasure. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Love you guys.
Love you guys. Good night.
Good night.